An hour or two is not a lot of time to construct and showcase an entire fictional universe, which is why when critiquing films that have them, I tend to give some credit just for the effort. Frank Herbert, the guy that wrote Dune, once said that deep in the human unconscious is a pervasive need for a logical universe that makes sense, but the real universe is always one step beyond logic. For this episode, I'll be looking at movies that attempt to do just that, with varying levels of success. I'm Micah and you're watching Good Bad Classic. Good. The Fifth Element. Luc Besson is a great action film director and a solid scriptwriter. His name's on a lot of really big titles and franchises, like The Transporter and Taken. He's done a few lesser-known gems, like From Paris with Love and District 13, and there's even some critically successful stuff, like Leon the Professional and The Family. He's had some misses. He's had some big misses, but he's a pretty damn solid director. A good film is entertaining, but a great film can completely immerse you in the world and its characters. And this is why The Fifth Element works. The scenery is complex and vivid, and the details are immaculate. Every part of the Earth City and the cruise ship, and even Bruce Willis's shitty little apartment is intentional. I don't even mind the huge McDonald's product placement because we already have enormous McDonald's product placement everywhere, so that's believable. Some movies like this try to make the futuristic shit really subtle so you don't notice it at first and then say, oh wow, their clothes are a little sleeker or their phones are like little pieces of glass, and that can work well when it's done right. But what I really like is that Besson oftentimes chooses a lot of vivacious color and purposefully odd costumes for his characters because they stand out. The uniqueness and goofiness of the universe works perfectly with the uniqueness and goofiness of the film itself. All the wacky, unbelievable shit just ends up making the world more believable. This film is also matched by a collection of equally interesting characters. When I was a kid, my least favorite character in the movie was Ruby Road. Who was played by Chris Tucker, because I hate Chris Tucker on principle, and so should you. As I've gotten older though, Ruby has turned into my favorite character. What I first thought was mindless, obnoxious yelling, I realized was all this very intricate and grandiose humor that a lesser comedic actor wouldn't have had the chops for. Plus, he plays a cross-dressing TV host, so, props for being progressive, I guess. Bad. Pacific Rim. This movie is bad. Pacific Rim is a bad fucking movie. A hint for if you know a movie is gonna suck is if there's a really long monologue in the beginning catching you up to speed so that you can follow the plot.
Turns out I was looking in the wrong direction. When alien life entered our world, it was from deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. By the time tanks, jets, and missiles took it down, 6 days and 35 miles later, 3 cities were destroyed. Only 6 months later, the second attack hit Manila. To fight monsters, we created monsters, but the Jaegers were only as good as their pilots. So Jaeger pilots turned into rock stars, and it all changed.
Like, you're so stupid that you have to be spoon-fed this whole convoluted diatribe about ocean monsters and the creation of the Jaeger program and how their pilots used to be like celebrities and whatever the fuck. Like, we're watching a movie about giant robot boys beating the shit out of aliens. The suspension of disbelief's already there. This movie's largest problem is that it tries to convince us of all the wrong things. Guillermo del Toro is known for his weird style in the same way Wes Anderson is, so in that regard I give this film credit. But a box of dicks wrapped up in a nice piece of wrapping paper is still just a box of dicks. If all you want out of life is a box full to the brim with throbbing, hot, moist phallus, then that's great. And Pacific Rim is the film for you. So go now. Be free. But I don't. That's not for me. The story of Pacific Rim, unlike the relative simplicity of The Fifth Element, is needlessly complicated. Or maybe it just feels that way because all the details that are given don't help the plot, but instead try to flesh out this futuristic dystopian world. It goes into detail about the anatomy of these aliens and how there's an underground black market that sells dead alien parts, but it never explains what, in my opinion, was the biggest question of the film that was never properly answered. Why does it take 2 people to power a robot, except for this one, which I guess needs 3? They just say something like, one mind just couldn't handle it.
The neural load to interface with the Jaeger proved too much for a single pilot.
Okay, Why? Wouldn't joining the consciousness of another person's mind be like 1,000 times more technologically difficult rather than just learning how to operate a single humanoid robot body by yourself? And I wouldn't really care, except that so much of the plot revolves around how two people who aren't linked properly won't fight well or they go crazy or some shit.
Mako.
She's starting to taste the rabbit.
Mako, don't get stuck in a memory.
Weapons engaged. Plasma cannon powering up.
Oh no.
And that's another thing that bugged the shit out of me. The main character, who was a pilot at one point, and the romantic interest, who wants to be one, are testing out their compatibility for the first time in a robot. And basically, she starts losing her shit, and the robot powers up a rocket and almost blows up the military control center. Supposedly, there are only like 5 of these robots left. Okay, whatever. They're expensive to make. But you're telling me that the only way potential pilots can test their compatibility with each other is by getting in an actual armed robot? There's not one robot that has all the same shit minus the weapons? Or there's not like a simulator room of some kind? How the fuck does anybody become a pilot? How do they even get chosen in the first place? What makes me so mad about the movie is that Guillermo del Toro thought, as he often does, that his brand of stylistic CGI and adding a bunch of meaningless bullshit details would make up for the fact that everything about this film, the plot, the characters, the soundtrack, and the world itself is generic and lazy. The only cool thing about this movie is that Ron Perlman got to play a pimp.
Little bastard. Anyway,
Classic. The Chronicles of Riddick. I already know I'm gonna get flack for this. It's the first episode, and I already know people are gonna bitch. But you know what? I don't even give a shit, because this movie was fucking rad. So the Chronicles of Riddick pulled an alien and turned a horror franchise into an action franchise. I'm gonna go more in depth about the implications of that in another episode, but for now I just wanna look at the theme here, which is sci-fi world building. And this movie gets it right. Unlike its more generic counterparts, like the third Matrix movie, the Chronicles of Riddick did something which you rarely find in cinema. Rather than riding the gravy train and building off the successful inaugural film, director David something took his sequel in a completely different direction, to include a brand new cast, a galactic government with an intricate political structure, and an enemy based off a complex religious hierarchy. All of this exposition with our main bitch Riddick in the center. And if Riddick had been played by someone else, I don't think this idea would have worked. But the only thing Vin Diesel plays better than a superpowered badass is a superpowered badass with a grudge in space, with eyes that glow. The special effects were lush. The costumes were unique without being outlandish. Zoe Saldana was in it. It did everything right. Chronicles of Riddick used its larger budget and crew to make the film something greater than its predecessor. The end result was a world that begs to be explored, and a film that I immensely enjoy every time I watch it. Not like this shit.
anyway,
That's all I got. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment so I'll know what movies to critique next.